Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Jordan Warren, co-founder and CEO at Hey Joe Coffee. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. What I loved about what you guys are doing is you're building kind of a hardware product, and I like kind of talking to people about that whole process, but kind of maybe before we kind of get into that, let's get to know you a little bit better and kind of cover your background. So do you want to maybe start off with where you grew up?
Sure, yeah. I grew up in Atlanta.
Okay.
Suburbs of Atlanta.
Sure.
And then went to high school around there, and then I actually kind of moved around, skipped around a bit. So I lived in New York and...
Okay, so what got you up to New York?
Just, I guess, family move. You know?
Oh, okay.
And just transferred high schools up there and graduated up there, up in upstate. Very cold.
Sure.
Then
Compared to Atlanta, sure.
Oh, man, it's brutal. It's like 9 months of winter. But then I went to college in Charleston.
Okay, what'd you take in college?
Business. At first, I majored in business, and then I transferred to college in Atlanta. Came back to Atlanta.
Okay.
And then changed my major to business and film.
I got you.
And then transferred again to UGA.
Okay. Why the transfers?
So originally I went to Charleston because I love Charleston. I mean, I think it's a beautiful place.
I've never been, but I heard it's beautiful, and clearly.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I just like the energy there. But after a year of being there, I got together with a girl in Atlanta.
I got you.
And a lot of my friends and family were back in Atlanta, so made the move back to Atlanta. And then as I was going to school in Atlanta, even though I came all the way back for all that, she was in Athens, so it was still kind of a long-distance thing. And then I started going to Athens to visit her, made a lot of friends in Athens. So UGA was a lot more social environment compared to where I was. And
got you.
Made the move there, too.
Very cool. So you got out of college. What did you kind of end up doing after college?
Oddly enough, I had an opportunity to go into kind of a marketing position.
Okay.
Which was kind of exciting, but it was in sports. It was sports marketing.
Sure.
And I'm really not into sports.
I got you.
Like I'm the kind of I'll watch it if it's on TV, but I don't follow teams or anything. So
sure. I'm in the same boat, so I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a combination of marketing and sales of sports.
Sure.
And I wasn't terribly passionate about the position, so had an odd kind of opportunity and ended up just starting a business. Right out of college.
So what kind of business, and why did you decide to kind of just go into business for yourself?
So my father-in-law, my now father-in-law, so it was my wife's father was a co-owner of a franchise.
Okay.
So we had the ability to get the franchise rights to a store.
I got you.
But I mean, we still had to invest in a store and
Right.
build it out and do all that. So we took out a loan to do that, but we got to bypass the franchise rights. So anyway, the field or the industry was bioidentical hormone therapy. So it was
interesting.
Totally random, but it was a cool learning experience. My wife is very passionate about nutrition and health and wellness, so she's also kind of turned me onto that and changed a lot about my habits. So we got into that and did very well. Grew it to be the top producing franchise in the nation. And
wow, congrats, man. That's awesome.
Thanks. And sold it. So after that, I got into product development.
Okay.
Totally
Sure. I love it, though.
I have always, I guess, considered, I've had a lot of ideas, so product development seemed like a really interesting field to me to learn about. So started working at a company and then partnered at that company and then actually started running that company. And then so along that way, I kind of established a network of resources, factories. I had to travel to China a lot. I had to meet with buyers from Target and Menards and Home Depot. And
I got you. So how was that experience traveling and meeting people in, China and whatnot? Like probably a language barrier.
Oh yeah.
What was that experience like? I'm always fascinated by that.
It was really interesting. And it's still interesting because I go to China probably 3 times a year or something like that.
Okay.
And each time it gets easier, but it's just constantly a reminder of, people say it's a small world.
Sure.
And it's not. I mean, to me.
Okay. Why do you say that, out of curiosity?
Because I get on a plane, I get on this metal vessel, and I'm on it for 14 hours.
Okay.
And then I step out of the plane, and I'm no longer in, the world I'm used to. It's a completely different environment.
Sure.
I can't talk to anyone. If I'm not with anyone that speaks English, it's like, you can't speak to anyone. No one knows English.
Sure.
Or some people do, but it depends on where you go in China.
Sure.
So it's just a very different cultural experience, and it's humbling to kind of look around and see, the way that another part of the world lives. It's just like it's not what we're used to.
Sure. So you always bring like a translator then, or have you kind of learned the language a little bit, or a little of both?
A little both. I don't bring a translator, but I happen to. So when I was mentioning that I was kind of establishing a network of manufacturers and sourcing agents over there, a lot of those guys, in business in China do speak English. So
okay, because they deal with a lot of people in kind of North America.
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah,
and probably other parts of the world.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, they manufacture and import. So I'll go over there, and they'll, depending on where I'm traveling, if I go to Ningbo or Shenzhen, I'll meet with them, and we'll go around. But if I'll oftentimes go back to Shanghai or travel to Beijing, and then I'm on my own. So
I got you.
I like it both ways.
Okay, so you were doing this manufacturing stuff on your own. Did you self-taught? Like, how did you kind of learn this stuff?
So when I got a position at the product development company I was mentioning,
sure.
I learned. I just from the ground up learned. From the engineering stage to iteration stage to the design stage to the development stage to actually manufacturing it, bringing it to market. And I just kind of had to learn each one of those components.
So did you have somebody helping you with that, or you basically had to do it yourself?
Oh no, I had someone definitely helping me with
okay.
it, that had an established background and a network already established. So
okay, very cool. So at what point did you kind of decide to leave that company?
Well, I never really left the company. I still kind of manage it.
Okay.
So it's kind of mixed in with Heijo Coffee.
Okay.
In terms of the infrastructure, the foundation of it is logistics. We've got to produce products in China.
Sure.
And then ship them in.
Okay.
And then ship them out to distributors or directly to consumers.
Okay, so is this Asia Direct or what's the company?
Yeah, that is the name of the I guess the company that's kind of partnered with Heijo Coffee.
I got you. Okay, so at what point did you decide to kind of branch off and do Heijo Coffee? I guess you're not really branching off. You just like added it to the portfolio then,
right.
I guess.
Yeah, the original intention was to kind of diversify the products that we offered. But we got to a point where it just picked up a lot of traction that we were like, well, let's make this a separate entity and focus on it in a different way because the product itself has different requirements.
I got you.
With Asia Direct, we're more producing lawn and garden, metal stuff that's meant for retail, whereas Heijo Coffee is more of like it has more requirements for social media management and branding and all the things that go along with that. So once we got enough traction, we were like, we need to really build this infrastructure out separately.
I got you. So what exactly is Heijo Coffee?
Heijo Coffee is it's a to start simply with the mug is a battery-powered self-brewing coffee mug. So
okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Sure, especially in the startup space. I think the running joke is that developers turn coffee into code. So I think it's awesome that what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
So what was the idea, or like when did you decide, well, this is a real thing that we want to build? Like, how did you come up with the concept?
So the concept came from, I'm a coffee, they call it enthusiast, fanatic, addict,
sure.
Whatever. But It came just, it kind of snowballed. So I had one of those standard experiences at Starbucks or a local coffee shop where I got a cup of coffee and got in my car, took a sip. It was too hot, burned my mouth, put it down, took the top off, went over a speed bump, spilled it everywhere. Got to the office, it was too cold, heated it up, tasted burned, that kind of thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then I got frustrated because I was like, this is this is not the first time it happened to me. It happened to me multiple times. So then I thought, well, I'm in product development. What's the solution to this problem?
I got you.
And it just kind of snowballed from there. So.
Okay, so you built probably like a first prototype, or how did you build the first version of this thing?
Yeah, so the first version was, we had to engineer in SolidWorks, and then we 3D printed it. And then, tested it from a feasibility standpoint. But, getting into this, I really had no idea how complicated this project was going to be.
Sure, because you went from kind of doing like metal lawn kind of stuff development for retail, and then you're moving to like a full like electronics company, kinda, right? Like,
yeah, definitely.
So what was the process of that? Okay, so you 3D print this thing, then what happens?
Well, from the manufacturing standpoint, we had to figure out a system where we could actually brew the coffee. So we went through that process of, saying, okay, we figured out a way to get it to drip through and, do all that. But then...
How did you figure that out? Were you building little prototypes?
No, we had an engineer that we were working with in-house from Georgia Tech, really smart guy. And, he helped us figure it out. So from there... we thought we had kind of solved the issue and we could kind of move to manufacturing, but the problem was that there's just, everything that you can possibly imagine will go wrong when the more complicated a product gets. So the way we'd envisioned it, there were leaking issues that really couldn't be bypassed because water finds a way through everything. And and then there were battery issues, and there were heating plate issues, and PCB board issues, and just everything in between. So, the process was not straightforward. It's hard for me to say, it went from this to this to this because it was...
So how do you kind of solve these problems as they come up? Do you have to fly back to the manufacturer? Do you have calls on the phone? Do you have to kind of re-engineer stuff? A bit of all of that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because, the way that the internet is today allows us to communicate very effectively over email. But there's nothing more, I guess, that has more impact than face-to-face, kind of seeing things hands-on. So it was a little bit of both, but it's mixed with a lot of late nights because there's so many deadlines, and China's obviously on a 12-hour time zone difference.
Right.
So oftentimes I'm working at 12 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m. to on Skype or calls or email, or I'm over there in China. So it's a bit of both. Yeah.
Okay, so when you go over there, you have like a working version that you're happy with. What's the process? Or do you work with them, like the manufacturer, to kind of get the version that you're going to say, like, okay, make us 1 million of these or whatever the number is? How do you get to that? And how do you kind of go from like we're going to build this to, like an actual product where you get a bunch of them back?
That was a great question again. And something that I didn't even think of, I guess, until later, but because of the difference in the nature of the product being electronic, it's going to come with defects and things like that in the original stage. So as we got to that point, we had to figure out, well, let's stagger the shipments. So instead of producing 1,000 at once or 10,000 at once, we produced 100 and then a couple hundred and then a few hundred, and had them send them in, and we had to test them in-house. We shipped them out. We had to assess feedback from people, because last thing we want to do is get 1,000 that have one issue that makes the whole thing not work. So
that makes a lot of sense. So how did the first run go? Did you get a bunch returned, or it was pretty successful? Or
fortunately, our team in China is extremely capable, and they're very. They've got 8 or 9 full-time engineers, working around the clock on this project, because they believe in it as well. So we ended up getting a really pretty solid product to ship out. The defect rate was still, it was below what we kind of projected, but still, had to sort it out. So yeah, we did get some returns. It was, I think around 6 or 7% defect rate.
That's not bad.
No, it wasn't bad at all.
Did you, because from what I understand about it, and I have a limited knowledge in this space, but you basically need to go to manufacturing with a working version and then they kind of still tweak it a little bit. Is that correct? Because you say they have people on their team, right?
Right.
And I'm assuming when you have to build, you kind of probably have to maybe go through a couple maybe manufacturing process because you have some electronics in there. You have to get like the actual thing, the cup made, and then there's other pieces. Like, did you have to work with a few manufacturing companies or do they just kind of handle that for you?
Yeah. So again, we have to work with, to put together one mug takes 27 different manufacturers.
Wow.
So it's a legitimate supply chain we had to build out from the ground up. Which is another reason why there was just so many delays and issues that came up along the way that were really, who would have guessed that it would take 27 manufacturers to put together?
Yeah, like I never would have. I maybe would have guessed like a couple, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Right? So when you say 27 manufacturers, like it sounds like some of those probably build maybe like a really small component or just like one little piece of that. Is that fair to say?
Yep. All the manufacturers they specialize in, typically in one or two things.
Okay.
Whereas, huge companies will build out their own factories and put the whole supply chain in one place.
I got you.
We're not at that caliber. So we have to go for each individual component, whether it's plastic injection or heating plate or the electronics or the battery, and those are all individual factories that manufacture those.
So have you been to all 27 factories, or you just kind of deal with a couple and then they handle the others?
I've visited most of them.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome. So I'm kind of curious, like I've seen, in movies and kind of stuff or documentaries that kind of show the factory floor, like I get that through audio it's hard to kind of say what they look like, but is it just like rows and rows of people just like assembling stuff, or what does it kind of look like?
Some of them, yeah. Okay. Like for instance, the battery factory that we work with is actually, they produce, we tried to find the highest quality manufacturers that we could. So they're very, well maintained, clean, and, good places to work for Chinese people working there. So the battery factory, for instance, is they produce the main battery for, I guess, the equivalent of the Tesla in China.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not as big as the Tesla, but it's like their main electronic battery powered car. So so that factory, as an example, does have a tremendous amount of manpower there, working on. It's amazing when you think about a battery, like all the different things that go into it. Like you've got the internal, stuff that goes inside, and then they wrap it and they solder it, and then, each person has a different part in that process. So.
Okay, so I'm assuming you've seen that whole process, like just stood there and watched, or
yeah.
That's cool. I would love to see that one day. Just like. I don't even, at the end of the day, really even care what they're building. It would just be fascinating to watch that whole thing kind of just unfold.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like how it works or how it's made.
Totally, yeah. That's awesome. So I'm kind of curious then, how long did it take you going from kind of idea to the first run? Like, it had to have been months. At least months.
It was more like a year, yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Because, again, putting these things together... it's not a year from the time that I had the idea until we had a working prototype.
Sure.
But from the prototype phase to actually, being ready to put it out to market, took about a year. Yeah.
Sure. No, but that's not terrible. It doesn't sound like a lot of time. Like in the startup space, a year's a long time. But when you're building something physical, especially electronics, that doesn't sound like that long a time. Is that a fair statement?
No, not at all. I'm sorry. Yes, that is a fair statement. It's not, an unfair thought. I think that the issue with us was that even though we have a product ready to ship in a year time span, there's still all these little things. Like for me, when I look at the product, I'm always saying, I see all the things that need to be changed because I'm listening to customer feedback. So to me, it is a final product, but I'm still constantly working with our manufacturer to say, we've got to improve this, we've got to improve that, we've got to improve this, we've got to improve that. So
I got you.
So yes, it is a final product, but in my mind, there's still much further to go.
Sure. Okay. So is a lot of that based on the customer feedback, your own thoughts, or a bit of both? Or kind of how do you decide, like, okay, well, we have maybe these, say, 3 things that we want to improve upon. Everything's working good now, but we want to improve these things. Like, how do you decide what to tackle first, I guess?
It's a good question. I think most of it comes down to, at our stage, cost, because
I got you.
I mean, you'd be amazed at like just the little changes, how much they cost, because you've got to completely redo like a mold or something, and
I got you.
create a new plastic injection molding to make the battery just a different shape or something.
I got you. So, but you just okay. So like that makes a lot of sense. You could be changing the whole or a big chunk of the design of the product just by making a little change. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've got a lot of ideas for, second generation, third generation, versions, and I'm excited about that. It's amazing the amount of capital it takes to get just little changes or.
Sure. And obviously the more orders you get, the cheaper they are per unit.
Sure.
But is there kind of a minimum run? Like you mentioned 100. Is that kind of a minimum? Can you do less than 100? Or at what point are they just like, sorry, we need X amount?
The issue, these are great questions. The issue is, this is stuff we learned along the way. So, because there are 27 different manufacturers.
Sure.
And a lot of those factories are, large scale producers of like batteries for a huge car in China.
Sure.
They won't take on a new client and produce for like a bunch of guys in small scale. So you've really got to provide to them, at least some evidence or incentive to if I order 1,000 at first, we're estimating, projecting 10,000 later, 20,000 later.
Okay.
So
I see.
So the MOQs or minimum orders are higher than 100. Right now we're usually at about 1,000 per run that we can do.
And so how long does it take to say, okay, we want another 1,000? How long does it take for you to say, like, okay, build me another 1,000? How long does it take for you to actually get them?
At this stage, probably like if I put in a request today for 1,000 more to be manufactured, we could have them completed in 30 days.
Well, that's not bad.
No, not at all. But then you've got to consider the time to get it here. So if as of recent, we've been air shipping, which is extremely expensive.
Sure, I can imagine.
But there's a high demand, so we don't want to run out of inventory. So, but in the event that we're get on a more consistent kind of projection scale, then when you ship them by sea, it takes about 6 weeks.
Okay.
So 30 days plus another month and a half to get it here.
Interesting. Yeah. And 6 weeks isn't terrible, but I get, like, if you're running out of supply and people are ordering, you're like, okay, we need some more. Let's get it over here.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So what's the cost of the mug?
It MSRPs for $99.
Okay.
Online.
And then you have a subscription model as well.
Uh-huh.
What exactly is that?
So subscription model, so you can buy, we sell coffee that's compatible with the mug, and we kind of guarantee optimal results with our coffee because off the shelf stuff, it's packed very tightly, water doesn't flow through it as easily, the grade of the paper is too thick, so the extraction isn't as easy. So ours is kind of custom made to work with the system of brewing that we've designed. So anyway, we sell our own coffee. You can buy a 30-day supply for $24.99, but the subscription, you get a discount at $19.99 per 30-day supply.
Okay.
And right now it's set on a month-to-month, but we're quickly or soon going to be introducing kind of like an every other month, every 3 months kind of thing.
I got you. So how did you go about kind of sourcing coffee and then building your own kind of little coffee pods, for lack of a better term?
Yeah.
Like they don't look like a pod, but what would you call that then?
I call it pre-filtered coffee. I mean, just because it's literally just like a coffee filter that you would put in a drip coffee system, just closed around the coffee.
I got you. Okay.
And the main purpose for that is just to, the whole point of the mug is to bring a whole new level of convenience for coffee drinkers. So
sure,
instead of having loose grounds that you have to clean up, you can just kind of dispose of your coffee filter.
Sure, especially when you're on the go, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
that's the whole idea of the mug.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be spilling your coffee grinds all over the car or wherever you are.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. So walk me through the process of kind of how did you decide which coffee to carry and get it manufactured into that filter?
That was actually a really fun process because we got to taste a ton of coffee.
Sure. So did you have to travel for this, or?
Yeah, I traveled. All that's a completely different supply chain, and that's set up in the U.S.
Okay.
But our coffee distributors, I mean, they do import coffee from like Ecuador, Costa Rica.
I got you.
You know, places like that, and then they roast it in the U.S. and then we coordinate with multiple different distributors to custom package different blends of coffee.
Got you.
And so yeah, that's the way it works.
Okay, no, that's really cool actually.
Yeah.
So how long does that kind of whole process take, I guess, then? From you basically went to them and said, okay, well, let's try a bunch of coffee. We're going to decide which blends we're going to pick.
Yep.
You pick them. How long does it take to say, like, again, kind of the order thing? Like I say, you want, okay, well, I need, X amount of product.
Mm-hmm.
How long does it take from you to put that order in, say, today to when you have it at your, in your hands?
Because our distributor works on, really large volume, they've got a lot of coffee sitting around.
Sure.
So when we place an order and we issue, what's called a PO to them.
Okay.
Our lead time is about 2 weeks until they actually fill that PO.
Okay.
And then another about week to ship it so that it's landed in our warehouse.
I got you.
So much quicker than
Sure, yeah. Fair. So do you kind of have to time when you're getting new mugs and new coffee then?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Interesting. So did they do the manufacturing of like closing up the filter, or did you have to kind of outsource that a little bit, or walk me through the process of kind of building that filter?
Yeah, so the filter, we had to find a roaster. Is a very small section of the market, but a roaster that also had the machinery to package in pods or pre-filtered coffee. So there's not very many of them, and because we were requesting some like very custom kind of requirements,
sure.
We were able to work out a deal where they would customize it for us. And so they do everything in-house. They source the coffee, they roast the coffee, and then they package the coffee in the pods and in the packages and do all our packaging art and all that.
So did they have a lot of say in the design of that, or you kind of sent that, or you worked with them, or a little bit of both?
Nope. They basically said this is how we package pre-filtered coffee, and
I got you.
We kind of had to work around that.
Okay, so you had to incorporate that in the design of the mug.
Yeah, because and that's another thing that got brought up. We wanted to do like a proprietary type of pod, but
sure.
Then you have to come up with the tooling for that, which was so the tooling for it would be 6 figures or more, but then the machinery to produce it would be into the millions. So
wow. So hopefully one day.
Yeah, but again, that kind of goes back to the point of you have a small idea.
Sure.
To say, okay, well, we'd like to have our own version of this, and then you work the numbers out and quickly realize it costs millions of dollars to do. So
sure, and it's not worth it, at least at this point, anyway.
Right.
But I think that's good advice for people out there, right? Because the shows that I've done on hardware startups in the past get a lot of interest, right? And and that's why I'm like I'm trying to tell those stories of people that have kind of been through it. It makes a lot of sense, right? That you sometimes have to make these trade-offs that maybe aren't ideal in certain cases, but unless you want to shell out millions of dollars, you're kind of like, well, we need to work around this, right? And I think that's super important to mention to people.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, you got to kind of pick and choose where to, I guess, make sacrifices, and sometimes the sacrifices to, I guess, the founder or the person, where the idea originated are more meaningful than it would be to the customer, because, as the person kind of driving the product, you see all the flaws. You
Sure.
you see, you're looking at it like it's your child. It's your you were there from the beginning, and you saw the beginning. You see where it is today, but you also see the future. So kind of finding a middle ground there and knowing kind of where to let it go.
Sure. No, I think that's good advice, because even in the software space, you need to figure out where to let go. Obviously, in the hardware space, you need to do the same thing. And it's interesting to have people on like yourself on the show that have kind of been through it and done it in a couple industries now,
mm-hmm.
and how different it can be just based on what you're trying to build in a different industry.
Right.
So I'm kind of curious to know, do you have any kind of tips or advice for people that are looking to kind of build a physical product?
Oh man, advice. I would say one of the things that I had to learn doing this was just patience.
Okay. So if you're not a patient person, don't build a product.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't really consider myself a patient person.
Okay.
In terms of, I've learned patience through this process.
I got you. That's a good way of putting it.
So if you're not a patient person, but you want to learn patience, get into product development.
All right. That's okay. Anything else you'd tell people?
I'd say stick with it. It's I don't know, getting into this, I heard more it's not possibles and it can't be dones than I ever would have imagined.
Really? From who? What types of people? Like everyone?
I talked to over 10 or 11 different high quality engineering design firms in the U.S.
Really?
And some of them said, well, we have to charge you $25,000 just to do a feasibility study to see if it's possible. But most of them just said it's not possible with battery technology in its current state, and water requiring more energy than pretty much anything on Earth to heat up. It can't be done with your list of requirements. So and that's just one example. There were 30 other things like that happened along the way. So don't be discouraged when you hear no. Just look at it like an opportunity to find a team or a partner that knows how to do it, because there's a lot of people in positions of authority that will tell you it can't be done, and it's easy to say, well, that person knows more than I do. And a lot of times they do, but don't give up just because of that.
I think that's really great advice, actually, and it makes a lot of sense, because you're right, and part of, I think, the fun of being a founder and building something is overcoming that, right? And yeah. I know for me, nothing motivates me more when somebody tells me I can't do something.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're kind of in the same boat, right? Because you had all these people say like, nah. And you're just like, whoa, no, I'm going to figure this out. Like, screw you, basically.
I love it. I'm the kind of guy that if I tell someone an idea or tell someone I'm working on something, I feed more off the people that tell me that I can't do it than the people that support me. Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people out there like that, and I think it's good to just kind of reassure people, right? Because especially when it's something of your own, and like you kind of mentioned, like your own child or baby, like you're so heavily invested in this and you believe that it can be done, and then you hear all this negativity, it's almost like you need to just cut all those people out and just like keep going,
yep.
Right? And turn a negative into kind of that positive motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
And so I know this is kind of going back to earlier on in the show, but so then what made you find the engineer that actually helped you say, yeah, let's give this a shot?
It was a lot of trial and error through conversation and sacrificing. So I gave every one of the engineers a list of requirements that said, the mug in its final state has to be able to hold this much liquid. It's got to be able to fit in any standard cup holder. It can't weigh more than this. It can't be taller than this. The battery itself has, so on and so forth. So knowing where to find a firm that was, a really good outfit, that believed that they could do it, but with some qualifications of, well, you've got to go back to your list of requirements and, maybe take, this can't weigh more than a pound off of it, and I think that we can do it, kind of thing. So going back and forth and interviewing, I guess, the firms and the people associated with them, finding someone that said that I think that I can do this, made me much more confident, thinking, well, this is the person I've been looking for. I want to work with a team that says it's not easy, but I can pull it off.
Okay, so how long roughly did it take you to finally get that? Like, yeah, I think I can do that. Sounds like months, probably.
To decide on a firm?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely months.
Okay. So, no, it's good to know, right? Because I think you kind of just need to figure it out.
Yeah.
I think that's really good advice. But sadly, Jordan, we're running out of time, but this has been awesome. So let's kind of close the show with promoting where people can find you online. And if you want to promote any social media links as well, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, right now you can go directly to heyjoecoffee.com.
Okay.
And you can buy it there.
Sure.
You've got the, as you mentioned, the subscription service if you want to save a little and you drink a lot of coffee, or if you want to just try a 30-day supply with a Gojo mug,
Perfect.
then you can buy it there.
I love it, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to kind of keeping in touch and seeing where you take this thing.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Perfect,
Appreciate
man.
it.
Great. We'll talk soon.
Cool.
Bye. Thanks for listening. The music for the show was done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.